The thing didn't start to the next slide. So I will use this 20 seconds to introduce myself. Alright, hi, I'm Alex Scarborough, and last semester I did an Ignight Talk on how I set up expectations about what reading was like, and then those expectations failed, and so with that I learned something from my reading experience, but now the same thing happened with writing. So I'm going to talk about that. I was with Mr. Okay, never mind. All right, so this is Tom. This is a representative of an actual student that I had in my class. This is not an actual picture of him. Tom had a language barrier in our class. He was born in Brazil and moved to the United States, and so he wants to be a journalist when he grows up. And I was very surprised by that fact because when I read Tom's first time writing, he was not a very good writer, and I pegged him as a struggling writer. So let me go back. I started with my students teaching them about structure. And I started that by doing this really cool thing. Oh, topic sense, concrete detail, commentary, concrete detail, commentary. I'm going way too slow. So I focused on all the wrong things when I started teaching my students about writing. I was looking at moralizing and structure and things like that. Essentially, I was the amazing writer man, or so I thought. But I realized I was focusing on the wrong things. I was really focused on the structure. So after lots of practice on this very fit the mold kind of writing, they had their first time writing over One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And so I was worried that I was going to get a bunch of papers back that looked exactly the same, but at least they would have good structure, right? And that's exactly what I got. A lot of the same paper, the same structure, very little ideas, lots of plot summary. And I had no one to blame but myself, because that's what I focused on. And the only problem was that Tom didn't understand the structure. He gave me this really long paragraph that was not actually an essay, and I just struggled. I was like, where is this disconnect? What did I do as a teacher to make, because I couldn't blame him. I was like, I'm your teacher. I gave you this information. What happened? The good thing is that Tom had all the same questions, because after all the comments that I left on his essay after his first time writing, he came to me after school and said, I'd like to talk about this because he wants to be a journalist, and he thought himself a good writer. But he didn't fit this mold that I had set up for him. So we sat down after school and we talked, and I explained the structure more, and he finally understood. Problem was that the next time writing came around and he got the structure, but he still struggled with the analysis because there was still this disconnect, and I could tell the frustration on his face when he got the next Clyburn Park time writing back, and he just still wasn't getting it. So what I realized was that I was teaching to the test. We were pushing EOCs and how to write on an EOC test, and I just missed the mark. I forgot about my students' ideas because they have great ideas. They have great stories. So I knew I had to make up for myself. I knew we needed to do narrative writing because that's, again, one of the standards, but I thought, what a great way for them to tell their story. So we were doing their Eyes Were Watching God, and I asked them to think about the moments in their life that defined them, like Janie in the story. The really cool thing that came out of this was the fact that I got to share my story from a piece of creative writing that I wrote, or a piece of writing that I wrote during creative writing here at UGA. So I told my story about my battle with cancer because it was a momentous point in my life. I was modeling as well. What I didn't realize is all the tears that would come after I got done reading, because I did not realize that I had a student in my class whose mother was also battling cancer. And she saw me as an inspiration that if I could fight through, then her mother could fight through as well. Problem with this is that I am very awkward when it comes to emotional outbursts, and I do not know how to respond. So I missed the opportunity to tell them that their words can be just as inspiring. So they started on their narrative writings. They had to work. They put them in their journals. But the problem is that spring break started, and I was also grading the Clyburn Park essay, so I completely forgot about their narrative writing that I was so excited about. We'll come back to that. So these are the letters that I got within the last week of my last day of Peachtree Ridge. This one is from Tom himself, And he wrote me saying, thank you for your patience, thank you for sitting down with me, thank you for making me a better writer. Very sweet, very emotional, but then I started thinking about, like, you're thanking me for putting you into this mold, and I don't know if you're thanking me for the right things. The good thing is that I have an awesome mentor teacher. So as she was grading their narrative writing, she started sending me pictures of every single one that each student said, I want to make sure Mr. S sees this. So this is Tom's, and I got the chance to read about his move from Brazil to the United States and how terrifying and how exciting it was. And I just know that he is going to make a good journalist one day, because he has great stories. And I needed to make sure that those comments that I left and that mold that I told him to fit into was not the last thing he heard from me. So I wrote a letter to all of my students that I went back and gave to them to say that their stories matter. To say that no comment that I left, no grade that I gave them will ever define them as writers. I had to stop judging by this standard because not everybody fits that mold. Not everybody fits that standard. And so I learned to make sure not to lose my focus, to make sure that when my students begin to write, when I begin to teach them, that I focus on what matters most, and that is their voice and their stories that they have to share with the world, because all of them matter. And that's what my students taught me about writing this semester. Thank you, guys. I was not expecting that.
So, where does writing instruction start for you next year?
I think the way we started out this semester was the fact that we decided to start with, this is a good way of writing to begin with, and this is a good way, instead of saying, where are you at in your writing, and let's come alongside you and figure out what you need to make it to that next step. Because the problem was with Tom, he was a great writer. His narrative writing piece was wonderful, well-structured, strong wording, and so if I would have seen that first, I would have said, all right, let's take what you know already and fit that into what you need to be able to excel with time writing, instead of just giving them what we thought they needed in the first place. Don't make me cry again.
No, I know. One of the things that we talk a lot about in program work, and that this team is thinking a lot about, is the craft of teaching, right? So courses are about craft. Was there a point in your coursework, in that craft work, that communicated to you that structure and standards and assessments and things were the things that we needed to be focused most on? Because what you described for me is art, which is that part that I can't.
Yeah, I think when you get into a school, I mean, testing is a reality. And so you hear the fact that they're focused on making sure students do well on these tests, and you want students to excel, you want them to get to the next grade, you want them to have good grades. And so I think at some point you have to say, yeah, let's help you learn how to teach to that test. But I think it's making sure that's not the only thing you focus on, that you can do both at the same time. You can tell stories that you, again, one thing I didn't get to is, like, you can still have a voice while you're making a claim during a analytical literary analysis essay. You can still have a voice, you can still tell a story when you're making an argument in a persuasive essay. And so you can have this very structured kind of thing and also bring a lot of personality into it. And I think we sometimes forget to bring that personality in.